Hello and welcome to a new video. It's me, Martin, and today we're going to be looking at 5 ways to incorporate newspaper articles in online and offline classes. One of the challenges that we encounter with students is getting them to access authentic material and not making it so overwhelming, giving the students some form of doubt that they won't be able to read or comprehend newspaper articles. However, with these 5 activities, hopefully you get some inspiration about incorporating news articles in your lessons, which will engage and motivate students to read outside of the classroom as well. Maybe give them the strategies required to approach a news article. I'm breaking it down into some 5 lesson activities just to make it more motivating and engaging, because if you just give a newspaper article to a particular student, then they may find it, they may switch off, or they may revert to their smartphones, and they may use their smartphones to scan the text and then translate it automatically onto their phone, and then they can review it in their first language. What we're going to be doing is we're not going to be doing that. We're not getting students to scan the text or any form of translation, automated translation, but we're going to give them the skills necessary to approach an authentic piece of writing in English and for them to be able to read it effectively. Without any further delay, let's get started and enjoy the rest of the video. So the first lesson idea is, what's the story? Now, what I would recommend when you're organising this lesson activity is to source a variety of different images about different news articles. The good thing about online news articles is there's usually an accompanying image, and you can either print the image out or you could put it onto the online whiteboard, copy and paste it over, or put it onto some slides. You can then place a selection, maybe get 5 news stories, 5 images to correspond with the news article, and get the students to have a look at the images. And if you're teaching a group of students, get them brainstorming together. What's the news article? What's it about? What things come to mind? Can they predict what's going to be happening? And they, if you're in the classroom, you can either put it all around the classroom. If you're teaching online to one-to-one or a group of students, place it up on the whiteboard, on the virtual whiteboard that is, and get the students to do the same. Predict, try and guess, try and see what comes to mind. Have they read the article in their first language? Are they able to formulate what they've read in their first language and produce it into English? Are they able to verbalize that with other students? Are they able to share ideas? And give students around 5 minutes just to brainstorm, activate the schemata, as we say. Get them to write down as well any ideas, thoughts, reflections, things that they heard from other students, if it's groups, or personal things that they thought about, and get them to choose one article or one image that they prefer out of the 5, for example. Out of the 5, if they choose one, get that student to read the article and try and compare with their predictions. Has everything kind of matched together, or have they discovered something new? Get the learners to share what they've read together if it's groups of students, or to share with you if it's one-to-one online as well. Whilst they're reading, you can get them to highlight and underline particular vocabulary which is new, and to get them to guess what that vocabulary might mean. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it an adjective, a verb, a noun? And that sort of thing. Lesson activity 2, guess the article. In this case, I would recommend choosing an article which is unusual, interesting, strange, which would really engage and stimulate the learners in the classroom or the online lesson. And what I would encourage is choose 8 words from the article, keywords from the article, which kind of give an idea about what the article might be. Write up these keywords onto the whiteboard, or the virtual whiteboard and get students to write down any thoughts and ideas about what the article might be about. Get the students to work together in groups if possible, but if they're doing it by themselves, get them to write down either on notebook, pen and paper, or a virtual notebook, Google document. Get their ideas down onto paper. Allow maybe 10 minutes for them to, get their ideas onto paper. And once students have written down their ideas, you then nominate, if it's a group class, you nominate the groups to report back what they think the news article is about. If it's individual, you get that individual student to report on the news article that they've predicted. Once all students have read their particular versions about the article, you then get them to compare their thoughts and ideas, their predictions, with the original source and see how close, how similar or dissimilar their predictions are. It's quite an engaging activity, but based on key vocabulary, it's getting them to predict what that article might be about. The other variation could be you get the headline from the news article, and then you get the student to guess what the article might be about, any keywords that come to mind, any predictions, etc. It's getting the students to guess the article. Lesson activity 3, matching headlines, images, and articles. So as I'd already mentioned with the first lesson activity, is with online sources, you're able to get images quite freely these days with a variety of different online news sources. What I would recommend is sourcing a news article which has an image, a headline. Of course, every news article these days online has a headline, and then the articles. But you mix it all up. If it's a physical classroom, you put the headlines on one side of the classroom. You could number it A, B, C, D, E. You've got the images, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then, maybe in Roman numerals, you've got the articles are written on the other side of the classroom, I. You get the students in individually to look at the headlines, get them to think about those headlines, again, guessing, predicting. You get them to move over to the images, and then they try and match the headline with the image. You can allow them to go back and forth if you wish. And then finally, the article. Hopefully you get them to match headline, image, article all together. You allow them to start to become acquainted with how headlines match with images, or headlines match with the prose, the text in the article as well. One variation of this activity is because there's a variety of news sources these days, BBC News, The Guardian, The Independent, etc. They normally report on the same thing. So you could get one news article from BBC News, headline, image, article, then The Guardian, the same thing, and then the same for The Independent. And then you can get the students to look at the differences between BBC News, Guardian and The Independent, and they can start to recognise how things are written differently based on the different variations of news sources. Lesson activity 4, headline extensions. The various other lesson ideas that I've included so far, this one is just the headlines, and it's to get students aware of the differences between headlines and how headlines are written, as opposed to how things are written normally in English. Choose a variety of different news articles and just pull out the headlines from these news articles, things that might be interesting for students, things that they're probably going to be studying at higher education, and place the headlines around the classroom. If you're teaching virtually, put it randomly around the virtual whiteboard. If you're teaching a group of students, get them to work together as usual and get them to have a look at individual newspaper headlines and trying to extend from the headline to something, with a bit more information. What do they think has happened? Can they pull out the key information? Are they able to write maybe a short paragraph about the headline, maybe 150, 200 words? Once the students have gone through each of the different headlines, then you get them to report back what they thought are, what the article's about. You put up the articles, and then finally the students try and match the headlines and what they've written to the actual article. It's a really interesting, engaging activity, and again it promotes prediction skills just based on the headline alone. Okay, we're now at the end with our fifth and final activity, and it's student questions. If you're going to be teaching reading skills, one thing that we tend to include is comprehension questions. And what better way to create comprehension questions is getting students to think about how comprehension questions are generated. Put them into the driving seat and they create the comprehension question. Give students a newspaper article with the headline and the image, and tell students, either whether they're working in groups or individually, that they need to create reading questions for another student or another group. Students either work together or individually on their chosen article or the article that you've chosen for them, and they need to try and create at least 10 questions, comprehension questions, for that particular article. Once students have made up their questions, and if it's a group class, maybe each group has individual articles, and then they have their individual questions, and you recycle it to another group, and they have to read the article together as a group and answer the comprehension questions. The variation for this for an individual student, if you're teaching them one-to-one, maybe online, is that yes, they create their comprehension question and you answer those questions. You read the article, but at the same time you choose another article and you write your own comprehension questions and you give that to the student, and whilst you're answering their questions, they could be answering your questions as well. Okay, so that's it. Those are the 5 different lesson activities which hopefully give some sense of motivation, engagement about using something as boring as it might be for second language learners, a newspaper article. If this video helped and you can see it being used in your classroom, then give this video a thumbs up. That would be greatly appreciated. And also, whilst we're here, I'm going to be including a newspaper headline lesson for members only. If you wish to join as a member, that would be great, because we already have 9 members. So thank you ever so much for all the support, and hopefully we can get to 10 and so on. And members, they will be able to access this lesson about how to teach newspaper headlines, and they can download it whilst this video's up. Anyhow, thank you ever so much for listening. Thanks for joining me today in this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Let me know in the comments if this video has been helpful, and take care, stay safe, and happy teaching. Bye bye.